The secret garden under the porch. Beneath the old wooden porch at the edge of Maple Lane, where the sunlight peeked through loose floorboards and dandelions grew between the cracks, there was a secret that no grown-up ever noticed. To anyone passing by, the porch was just a place for muddy boots and forgotten mail, a place where the family cat liked to nap in the afternoon sun. But to those who dared to look a little closer, to those with eyes wide open to wonder, it was the gateway to a hidden world, the secret garden under the porch. It all began one bright spring morning, when Lucy, a curious 7-year-old with a wild imagination and tangled brown hair, sat on the porch steps, tying her shoelaces. As she tugged at a stubborn knot, she heard a tiny tinkling giggle coming from below. At first, Lucy thought it was the breeze, or maybe the neighbours' wind chimes. But as she listened more closely, she realised it was coming from just beneath her feet. Lucy pressed her ear to the warm wood and listened. There it was again, a laugh, light as a dandelion seed, followed by the faint sound of music, as if someone was plucking the strings of a miniature harp. Her heart fluttered with excitement. She peered between the cracks, but all she saw was darkness and a few stray blades of grass. Lucy's little brother Oliver was building a tower of sticks nearby. She called him over, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Oliver, do you hear that?" Oliver, who was only 5 and believed that anything was possible, pressed his chubby cheek to the porch. After a moment, his eyes widened. "It sounds like a party," he exclaimed. "Let's find out who's having it." The 2 children scrambled down the steps and crawled around to the side of the porch where the lattice was loose. They wriggled through, careful not to catch their clothes on the splintered wood, and tumbled into the cool, shadowy space underneath. At first, it was just as they expected, a tangle of roots, pebbles, and the faint smell of earth. But as Lucy's eyes adjusted, she noticed something extraordinary. There, nestled in the shade, was a tiny wooden door, no bigger than a lunchbox, painted a cheerful green, and decorated with a wreath of dried flowers. Lucy and Oliver stared at the door in awe. "Should we knock?" Oliver whispered. Lucy nodded. She reached out and tapped gently. To their amazement, the door swung open with a creak, and a warm golden light spilled out, inviting them in. Inside, the children found themselves in a magical garden, unlike anything they had ever seen. The ceiling glowed with twinkling lights that looked like stars, and the air sparkled with the scent of honey and wildflowers. Miniature trees, just the right size for squirrels and sparrows, lined winding paths made of polished pebbles. A brook, the width of a ribbon, bubbled merrily, and colourful mushrooms dotted the soft mossy ground. All around them were creatures small and strange, tiny rabbits with wings, beetles wearing hats, and a hedgehog in a tiny apron carrying a tray of fresh-baked cookies. The music they'd heard drifted from a band of grasshoppers playing acorn drums and leaf violins. A small, elegant figure with shimmering wings fluttered over to greet them. She wore a gown of dandelion fluff and a crown made from a rose petal. "Welcome, Lucy and Oliver," she said with a voice as light as the morning breeze. "I'm Petal, the fairy who tends the garden under the porch. We've been waiting for you." Lucy and Oliver couldn't believe their ears. "You know our names?" Lucy gasped. Petal nodded, her eyes twinkling. "Every kind-hearted child is known to the garden. Only those who truly believe in magic can find their way here." The fairy led them through the garden, introducing them to all its inhabitants. There was Basil, the wise old turtle who grew the sweetest strawberries, Pippin, the squirrel who could leap higher than anyone else, and Bumble, the bumblebee who painted flowers with dew each morning. That day, the garden was buzzing with excitement. It was the annual blooming festival, when the first golden crocus opened its petals to the sun. Petal explained that every year, the festival brought all the creatures together to celebrate the beauty of the garden and the kindness that kept it safe. Lucy and Oliver joined in the festivities. They helped string lanterns made from snail shells and glowworms and learned how to weave daisy chains. Oliver tried his hand at painting flowers with Bumble, getting his fingers sticky with sweet-smelling nectar, while Lucy listened to Basil's stories about how the garden had first begun, many, many years ago, when a lonely seed wished for friends. As the afternoon wore on, the magical creatures gathered around a tiny stage built from twigs and leaves. Petal invited Lucy and Oliver to be the guests of honor. Lucy felt a little shy, but Petal squeezed her hand. "Would you like to make a wish for the garden?" she asked. Lucy nodded, closing her eyes. She wished for the garden to always be filled with laughter, kindness and wonder, so that other children could discover its magic too. Oliver wished for a never-ending supply of cookies, and everyone giggled at his hopeful grin. At that very moment, the golden crocus bloomed, its petals unfurling to reveal a dazzling light. The garden sparkled even brighter, and sweet music filled the air. Each creature cheered and danced, and Petal thanked Lucy and Oliver for their wishes. As the sun began to set, Petal led the children back to the little green door. "Remember," she said, "the garden will always be here, as long as you believe in its magic and carry kindness in your hearts." Lucy and Oliver squeezed through the door, blinking as the familiar sights and sounds of their backyard returned. The porch above loomed quietly, just as it always had. But as they crawled back into the sunlight, they noticed something new. A carpet of tiny wildflowers growing where none had been before, and the faintest sound of laughter drifting up from below. From that day on, Lucy and Oliver visited the secret garden under the porch whenever they needed a little extra magic. Sometimes they brought their friends and told them stories about the garden and its wonderful inhabitants. And though the grown-ups never saw the little green door or the fairy with the dandelion dress, they often wondered why the children laughed so much and why the flowers by the porch bloomed brighter than anywhere else on Maple Lane. As the seasons changed, the garden changed too. In summer, the garden was alive with the hum of bees and the glow of fireflies. Lucy and Oliver spent long afternoons helping Petal and Bumble gather dew to water the thirsty flowers, and watched as Pippin the squirrel taught the baby birds to fly. Sometimes a gentle rain would fall, and the garden would shimmer with droplets like tiny jewels. In autumn, the leaves of the miniature trees turned brilliant shades of gold and orange. The creatures of the garden prepared for the colder days by gathering acorns and weaving warm nests from soft moss. Basil the turtle told tales of winters past, when snowflakes danced through the cracks in the porch and blanketed the garden in sparkling white. Lucy and Oliver learned to make lanterns from hollowed-out berries, which they hung from the branches to light the way on long, chilly nights. Winter in the garden was a time for quiet wonder. The brook froze into a glassy ribbon, perfect for sliding and skating. Petal and her friends invited Lucy and Oliver to their winter ball, where everyone wore cloaks of glittering snow and danced by the light of icicle chandeliers. The children sipped warm blackberry tea and nibbled sugared chestnuts, feeling safe and happy in the glow of the secret garden. And when spring returned, bringing the first crocus bloom and the promise of new adventures, Lucy and Oliver always found something new in the garden, a hidden nook, a new friend, or a forgotten story waiting to be told. One day, as Lucy and Oliver played beneath the porch, they heard a soft sniffle coming from the far side of the garden. Curious, they followed the sound and found a tiny mouse curled up beneath a fern, her nose twitching with worry. Petal fluttered down beside them. "This is Millie," she explained gently. "She's new to the garden and feels a little scared." Lucy knelt down and offered Millie a crumb from a cookie. "It's okay," she said softly. "Everyone is new once. Would you like to play with us?" Millie peeked out, her eyes brightening. Soon, with a little encouragement and a lot of kindness, Millie was chasing after Oliver and Pippin, her laughter joining the joyful chorus of the garden. From then on, whenever a new creature arrived, Lucy and Oliver made sure they felt welcome, remembering how it felt to discover the secret garden for the very first time. As the years passed, Lucy and Oliver grew taller, and their adventures in the garden changed. They learned how to help the younger creatures solve problems, like when the brook got blocked with pebbles, or when the wind blew away the lanterns. They discovered that the most magical part of the garden was not just the fairy lights or the talking animals, but the friendships they made and the kindness they shared. One summer evening, as fireflies danced in the twilight, Lucy sat with Petal on a mossy stone. "Will the garden always be here?" Lucy asked, her voice tinged with the wistfulness of growing up. Petal smiled gently. "The garden is as old as wonder itself. It will always be here for those who believe, who look for magic in the hidden corners of the world. And as long as kindness blooms in your heart, you'll never truly be far from the garden." Lucy nodded, feeling a quiet happiness settle over her. She knew that even when she was older, she would remember the secret garden and all its wonders. Years later, when Lucy and Oliver had children of their own, they told them stories about the magical place under the porch, the fairy who wore dandelion fluff, the squirrel who leapt higher than the treetops, and the mouse who found courage and friendship. They watched as their own children pressed their ears to the porch floor, listening for the faint sound of laughter and music, and smiled when they saw wildflowers blooming where none had grown before. And so, the secret garden remained, hidden beneath the porch at the edge of Maple Lane, waiting for the next pair of curious eyes and kind hearts to find their way. It whispered its secrets on the wind and shimmered beneath the stars, a gentle reminder that magic is never far away and that every heart has its own secret garden, just waiting to be discovered.